Hey, my name is Tim Remmers, and in this video I will show you some basic workflows I use to unwrap my 3D models in 3ds Max. For this video I'm using 3ds Max 2017. So let's get started. I have one of my models open here with the Unwrap Modifier, and I will show you some basic workflows I use to create this kind of unwrap. Okay, so as you can see, this is the added Uvw screen. How do you get there? Let's go back to the beginning. Let's collapse this and select a 3D model. And the first thing you want to do is go to your modifier list, scroll down all the way down to Unwrap Uvw. It's important that you pick this one and not this one. And as you can see now, you have the Unwrap Uvw modifier on top of that, and you see these green lines in there. And the next thing is to open the UV editor. So a UV unwrap is needed for your 3D model if you want to give your model a texture map. Texture map is basically a 2D painted or generated image that you can wrap onto your 3D model. I can show you an example of the worm you can see here on the right with the texture on it. As you can see, it is a colorful drooling worm right now, and this is the texture map you saw before in 3ds Max, but now with all the painted stuff on there. This piece of software is called Substance Painter. You can use this to texture your model. So you can see all the UV islands here, the painted details, and everything stays within this square. That's important to notice. Alright, back to 3ds Max. I've selected this cube and added the Unwrap Modifier on top of that, and as you can see, here is our square, but there is only one square here. You can click on the faces to select them. What will happen if you start painting on this? It's very easy. What you paint within this area will be projected onto the 3D surface. So in this case, if I start painting a dot here on the left upper side, there will be a dot here on the 3D model on the upper left side. However, since this face is using the same UV coordinates, it's also showing a dot here on the upper left side, and the same here. If we select this one, it will be projected on here. So make sure to don't overlap your UVs. So in this case, all the 6 faces are overlapping each other, and this can be useful in some occasions, but for this we generally don't want that. So how do we separate them from each other? We can do is we can just select this and move this away, and as you can see, like a little magic trick, all the boxes are coming out of the center here. You can move everything outside of the box, but please remember that the texture is going to take place within this checkered square. So now we have all the faces here, and what we can do is just select this, scroll down, and place them within this square. And if we paint within this little square, we can draw something here, and then we have something in this area of the UV map, and then we can paint individually on this plane. However, as you can see, there is a lot of unused space right now, so this is not being used, this is not being used. You want to fill in the UV space as much as possible, because this will be put into a 2D texture, 2D plane, a painted texture, and that will have a pixel resolution. For example, 1024 times 1024 or 512 times 512, which means your pixels are limited. So you have to keep in mind the texture resolution. So, for example, let's say we are using one texture map of 512 by 512 pixels, so 512 by 512 pixels, and we have this little square here. If you make that this size, it will use about 265 pixels by 265 pixels, right? Because it's only using a quarter of the whole texture. But if we get another side here and we have that one small or smaller, half of that, it's only using 128 pixels by 128 pixels, which means that the resolution of the texture on this area is smaller. So it's important to have your size, the size of the island, so these unwrapped faces, consistent in size. There's a neat trick to see if your pixel size is consistent, and then that's with the checker map. So you have this one, and I prefer this one. So now you can see that it's projecting the image within the UV space onto the 3D surface. So if I scale this down to only 4 squares, you can see it's projecting these 4 checker squares onto this face. And this one, for example, is a lot larger, so it's using a lot more pixels, and you have a lot more resolution, texture resolution. If you scale this up, you will increase the size, but that means you have to decrease the size of the other faces, and that's not what you want. You want to keep them as consistent as possible, the square sizes. If we go to the let me collapse this to show you. If I go to the worm here, add my Unwrap Modifier, go to the checker pattern, hide the wireframe, you can see all the squares are about the same size around the whole model. We can go to preference to change the checker tiling to 10, for example, and now you can see it better. So if, for example, this was smaller, the squares will be way bigger than the other areas here, and that means I have less resolution here, texture resolution to paint on. That's not what we want. Cool. Let's get back to our square here. So we want to evenly distribute the faces, and we want to place it all within this object. Also, we have to keep in mind our seams. So as you can see, the green lines are seams. This one, let me go to these two. These two are next to each other. As you can see here, this is the left face and this is the right face, but it is cut in half. There is literally a seam in here, and you can see where the seam should be. It turns blue to see where it is connected. That's this line. So what we can do with this is let's imagine you want to make a straight line in the texture from this face to this face. So, and these are like positioned like this. You start drawing here, draw a straight line, and then you have to go to this face and start drawing here again. But as you can imagine, it can be really difficult to perfectly align that. So in this case, you should stitch these two planes together. You can do that by stitching. Here in the lower area of the Edit UV panel, you can select vertices, edges, or polygons. And this is basically the same as in the modifier tab. So vertices are all the dots, lines are the edges are the lines, and the polygons are the faces. You can toggle between those three by using the numbers 1, 2, and 3 on your keyboard. Okay, so let's go to this edge here. And so as you can see, the aligning edge from the stitch is turning blue. Now, while having this edge selected, you can right click and click stitch selected. It will look for the blue line and then it will stitch it together. And as you can see now, they move together. They're not separate anymore. So in this case, I can just draw a line here and it will perfectly align on the 3D model as well. And as you can see, there is no green line here anymore. There isn't a seam. So, and this is how we are going to unwrap the whole box actually. So you can also go to edge here and click on the 3D model itself. So you can see it's aligning these two lines. So in this case, the sizes are off. So when I stitch this, it's trying to get an average size between this polygon and this polygon. But this is not really what we want, because if we go to the checker map, we can see the squares are evenly sized, kinda, but they are deforming here. You can see if I start moving the texture or the UV area, it starts deforming. If I turn this square unit into a strange shape here, you can see the UV deforming. That's not what we want. So let's select this one again and right click it and break it. So if we break it, we will cut it loose from the rest and then we can move it away. As you can see, we have a seam here again. So how do we get this back into a square? And how do we evenly size this? We can do that by using the Relax tool. It's under Tools, in the drop down on Relax. The default settings are fine. Relax by polygons. For this face you don't really have to change this. You can press Start Relax and then it relaxes to the original shape on the 3D model. Okay, if we are happy with it, we can apply it and now it is perfectly square again. Let's do that for this one as well. We can select them both, go to Tools, Start Relax, Stop Relax and Apply. So now they are square again. The only problem now is that they are unevenly scaled. There's this simple tool here in the Arrange Elements where you can rescale all the UV islands relatively to each other. So with the rescale selected, just click on this back normalize, and now they are all normalized within the UV space, with the same size. This is also the thing we will be using to pack all the UVs together in the end. So let's stitch the rest together. So now we can grab this border again, right click, stitch selected, and as you can see, we will get this nice origami box. Think of it as a paper model you have to unfold, so you can draw on this. Okay, so the bottom side is there, and there's no way to avoid the seams. Just keep that in mind. You are going to have seams, but you have to plan them and make sure they are in a good position. So for example, for this worm, make sure the seam of the texture is around a corner that's difficult to see in a game. For example, if the game is from this perspective, you won't be able to see a seam under his mouth. For example, I also have a big seam around his back, because you won't see his back a lot. And you will do your best to avoid the seam in the texture. As you can see, it's not the best example, you still have a seam here. Something I really need to fix, but that's the seam here on his back. You can't avoid that. Okay, so now we have a unwrapped box, and we can bring this model into Substance or whatever. I can let me quickly show you that. So I have imported the box into Substance Painter, and as you can see, I have the box here and the UV map here. So what we can do now is start painting on this face, and as you can see, it's painted, projected. Well, it's the other way around. You can start painting on this face and it's projected on the 3D model in this area. We can paint on the top, and we can paint on the bottom. And look at the bottom, and there it is. And as you can see now, we can just draw a straight line here from this point to this point, and that will be fine. Okay, so this is an example for a geometrical shape, in this case a box. And if you have other geometrical shapes, the workflow is pretty much the same. There is some difference though if you have a model that is still pretty square but have some let me just quickly shape this up. Into something else, like this, for example. And now we add a Unwrap Modifier. In the drop down, go to Unwrap Uvw, and go to the Open UV editor. And as you can see, we still have this box thingy, and the seams are all everywhere, and this is not going to look good. So the first thing you need to do is just select all the faces. I'm using Ctrl A to select all the faces, and go to projection and click planar map. So again, let's get the checker map here. This is not very useful. It's only projecting the upper side. Okay, so we need to figure out a way to get a decent UV map in here. So let's move everything out of the box first. And then we're going to look, okay, we're going to have this plane. So I'm selecting faces, select, hold Control and click other faces to select the rest. They will turn red if you're selected, obviously. And now, with these faces selected, you click on planar mapping again. So it's separated, it automatically breaks and separated. Let's move this over there. And let's do that for the other faces we want as a island as well. So let's select these two, planar map them. And so, okay, before continuing, we can see it's completely flat. You can use the planar map and then align it to, in this case, the y-axis. So it's projecting from this to this. You can see the y-axis here, the green arrow. And the same, we can do the same for this area, by the way. After clicking the planar map, let's do it on the, let's see, the z-axis for now. So it's projecting from top to bottom. However, as you can see, the squares are stretched here because it's projecting from here, and this will needs to be relaxed to project correctly. So let's go to Tools, press Relax, and start Relax, stop, and apply. So now it stretches the shape correctly. Okay, go to the other faces, this one, click, project on Y, move outside of the box, click, click, project on the X, move outside of the box, get the bottom, project on Z. So we have all the islands we want now. However, the sizes are inconsistent and a little bit stretched, as you can see on the bottom here. So what we will do first is get all the faces and relax them together, so everything is evenly scaled, evenly relaxed and not distorted. And we can go back to the rescale elements here and rescale them to the same sizes. Okay, so next thing is let's get this shape and turn it around. You can use this, you can just rotate it when you have this freeform mode. You can rotate it around that, like that, but you can also just flip it like this. So we have the upper side here. Oh, again. Okay, so we have the upper right side there, upper left over there. Let's go to the edge mode. We can select multiple edges here. So I've selected these two. Right click, stitch selected, and stitch them together. We can select this one and this one over here. And for the rooftop, well, rooftop, it's not a house, but you know, it looks like a house. And now we have something similar as the box. Okay, and everything stitched together. And let's scale this down. You can hold Control and Scale to keep the right dimensions of the island, so you don't squash it like this, because as you can see the UV gets messed up. Okay, let's collapse this, and no, let's just remove this. So that's a geometrical shape. What if we have a more organic shape like this shoulder piece I did in one of my other tutorials? So let's add the Unwrap Modifier, open UV editor, and as you can see it's already unwrapped. However, let's just do it like this. As you can see, there is no seams right now, and it might be tempting to start texturing like this. However, as you can see, there are a lot of overlapping borders right now. So if you're going to paint on here, you will also paint the same details on the other side. That's not what we want. That's why we are going to cut this up to make some separate UV islands. Okay, actually the same methodology applies here. What we can do is think about where we want the shape. We can select the faces, or let's just do it like this as an example. We can select this area. I checked the ignore back facing mask, so check the ignore back facing, so I can select the other side as well if that's not activated, and I select it like this. I'm not selecting the other side. That might be useful in some cases, so let's select that like this. Deselect this area. So now we have one area selected here. What we can do now is just simply add the planar projection again. There we go. As you can see, we have a seam here with the green line. However, the squares are a little bit deformed. So what we do now is go to Tools, Relax, and Start Relax. And now you see the nice organic shape relaxing to make the squares as square as possible. So, and we can start painting on this now to have some details on there. Let's do the same for this area. So I'm planning out on the 3D model itself what I want as my UV islands. Okay, so I want the whole upper part here. And this is not what I used for the final model, and I will show you in a second, but let's select this on the 3D model, and as you can see it's overlapping right now with the other pieces, but with this selected we press on Planar Map again and move this outside to see what we are doing. As you can see, the squares are really messed up right now. Oh, if the red is annoying, by the way, you can press F2 to toggle between the red field color and the red lines. It can be useful to see your model a little bit better. Alright, let's go to Tools, Relax, and just start relaxing. You can see it stretching correctly. And the squares are more evenly distributed right now. To do the relax, we need a seam, because it's literally stretching out the whole model, and I can show you that by using the Pelt Map. The Pelt Map is here on the right. If I have some more difficult shapes than these planes, for example this leftover shape, I can do a Pelt Map. Just so I click on this, and it's basically a combination of cutting the island out of the model and relaxing. So I start Pelt, and as you can see you have all these strings attached. And when I start this, it's stretching the model around these strings. Okay. We can stop the pelting and click Start Relax, and now it's relaxing to the correct shape. Okay, so I didn't pick this way of unwrapping, I didn't pick this way of the UV layout because I have a seam in here. So if I want to paint some details from this area to this area, this is going to be really difficult. So if you want to use this as a UV map, which you perfectly can because the squares are evenly distributed, the scale is off. This one has a lot more resolution. Oh, before I continue, you can select by element with this button. So it's difficult to select everything right now because there's another island underneath it. So you can activate select by element, and then you can just click on this one and move it here. So the resolution, this one is a lot bigger, so we need to tune it down a little bit, and let's just use this again to scale them all, to evenly scale them all. So the problem here is that we have a lot of wasted space again. So if we want to paint on this, all these checkered areas will not be used in the texture map, and that's a waste of space. We don't want to waste that. So what we can do now is do some kind of jigsawing puzzle madness. We can move this into a smaller square, something like this. Then we can select all the planes, go to the one of the corners, and then we can scale them all together to keep the size consistent. So we have a lot less wasted space. There is still some wasted space left, so let's see what we can do to avoid that. And it's not always possible. Sometimes you just have to deal with it. No, it's even worse. So what you can do if you want to avoid this, so if you want a bigger texture resolution, you have to make a decision. Do I want less texture resolution, or do I want a seam? Because I can grab this and deactivate this, select half of this and break this piece, so I have two separate islands. So now I can position this like this. And that one over there. And we can do that. Same for this one. Break this. Position this in a empty area here. Make sure in this kind of areas to not overlap the UVs. Position it like that. And I can already see this is not going to save me some size. So this is why I call this a jigsaw puzzle. You just move around the shapes to get a ideal way of distributing this. Like that. And now we have this shape left, and we can also break this one up. And now we can scale this into the UV space again. So as you can see, there's a lot less wasted space right now. We have more texture resolution to work with. We can use a higher texture. However, we have more seams. So if we want a line from this side to this side, it's a little bit more difficult to get a straight line. However, software like Substance Painter makes this easier, because you can also paint on the 3D model itself. So if I start painting here, it's projecting the paint on both sides. You see, so if you're using Substance Painter or other software like 3D Code, the seams like this seam don't really matter. So if you want a higher texture resolution, you can just break pieces up and do it like this. Okay, so one more important thing is, I said please don't overlap your UVs. However, you can use that to mirror things. So let me explain that. No, we don't need to collapse it. Let's just reset this model like this. Oh no, yeah, let's just collapse this. Okay, let's pretend we want to mirror this object. So we have a smaller texture resolution, but we want some high level details on this, and both sides are going to be the same. We're not going to unwrap this whole face and then have some high detail texture here, and we have to have the same amount of texture detail here. To get that, we have to double the size in the texture resolution. But since they are the exact same, we can copy that. So let's just remove half of the model here. And get the Unwrap Modifier here. And again, let's separate this first. Let's separate the bottom and the top first. So let's select this whole bottom area. Oh, I want the border to be separate, so that bottom and this bottom. So we will make sure to have a seam here on the bottom of the shoulder pad, which the player will hardly see. Okay, so we can use the planar map again, move that away, select the rest and use the planar map again, or use the pelt map. So select pelt, start pelt. So it's stretching everything. We can relax this into a nice shape. So let's get this one and relax that. And we can relax this one. Select everything. Scale this to the same size, and let's position this within the square. Let's check if the texture size is consistent. Yes, it is. And scale this up. So, what this means is that we can start painting half of the model now. And then, when we mirror this to the other side, we have a full piece again. Go to the Unwrap Modifier, and obviously we have a seam right here, but it still looks the same, right? That's because it's layered on top of this. So everything we paint on one side will be projected on the other side as well. You can see here, if I select this one, it's the same as this one because it's perfectly overlapping. Let me export this to Substance to show this. So here I have the armor piece loaded, and as an example I can show you when I paint on this area, or no, let's just paint. Get some nice red color, paint on this, and as you can see, because the UVs are overlapping, it's also projecting this on the other side. We can also paint here, or on the bottom, and again it's mirroring this to the other side as well. So overlapping UVs can be very useful, but only if you want it. Alright, the final thing I want to show you is that you can draw your own seams with the pelt function, which you occasionally need. So I can show you an example in which case you need this. Let's get the Unwrap Modifier on here, and let's just select all and select all faces and just destroy the unwrap. It's always fun to destroy stuff. Alright, the first thing is one nice tip, and that's when you are unable to move this, it's a very strange thing, and maybe I'm doing something wrong, but I have this since max 2009 or whatever older version. This is selected, but I'm unable to move this. It can be really annoying. So switching this doesn't make any sense. Doesn't really help. But just switch to vertex or edge mode and go back to polygon mode. I just do that by pressing 1 and 3 quickly. And then now I'm able to move it. So if you are unable to move it, maybe that's not the case with your version, but if you're unable to move it, switch between modes right here, and then you will be able to move it again. Cool. Okay, let's rewind that. Rewind, and show the example. Let's kill the worm. Detach his head. Kill it. And show the example with this one. So go to the unwrap, go to the modifier, let's destroy this again. So let's say we have this upper area or the lower area here. And let's break this apart. And now, if you want to pelt this, it's not going to work because it wants to stretch out this whole model out of this small little hole, and that's not going to work. So what we need is another seam. We can do that by painting the seams manually. So we can click this, edit seams, and let's make a seam here. So it's cutting the model open like this. Instead of just manually doing this, you can also use this one, the point-to-point seam. You click first point and you go all the way to this one. And the light blue line says, I'm going to cut this open when you press the Pelt Map. So let's press the Pelt Map and do start pelt. And as you can see, this turned green now, so it means it's cut open. And let's relax it, and now it's stretched correctly. And we can do the same for this area as well. If we are stretching it right now, it is okay. This shape is almost possible with the normal way of the pelt. However, you can see some faces here overlapping, and this is a problem because if we paint on this area, it will also project on this area and this area. So that's not what we want. And I see this one is also broken. How did that happen? It wasn't broken when I started the tutorial, as you can see. Just watch it back. Cool, so let's select this, go to the seams. Well, apparently this is already cut open, so we only have to cut open the rest here. Go to the pelt. It listens to the blue line. And we can do it like this. Alright, I hope this was somewhat useful for you. I didn't call this video a tutorial on purpose, because it was a mess. But it's a good thing, I think. It's important. One of the important things with unwrapping is that you don't give up, and it might sound very cheesy, but unwrapping can be really stressful when you start. However, when you figure out a solid workflow for yourself, it can be pretty relaxing actually. Yeah, and I just showed you some ways I am using. I think, and I hope you can use the same ways to get a solid workflow for yourself. But you really have to just open this, throw the Unwrap Modifier on it, and see what you can do with this. Just make sure about the things I told you. Work within the UV space, leave enough space between the UV islands, plan your seams, watch your pixel consistency, and that's about it. Keep practicing and make this fun for yourself. Anyway, I hope this was useful for you, and I will see you guys in the next video. Take care.